Frank was an unremarkable man living in Quebec, running a modest brake pad factory. His days were a monotonous blur of production schedules and supply orders, and the repetitive nature of his work had begun to wear on him. After years of enduring the grind, Frank decided he'd had enough. He sold his factory, pocketed a comfortable sum, and began to entertain a radical thought. There must be an easier way to make money. This wasn't just idle daydreaming. Frank was determined to find a shortcut to wealth. His solution was audacious. Why not create the money himself? Not in the metaphorical sense of generating wealth through innovative ventures, but in the literal sense of printing real cash. Frank dove into research with the intensity of a man on a mission. He chose the US dollar for his scheme, drawn by its stability and widespread use. The next year and a half were consumed by his obsession with understanding the intricacies of dollar production. He scoured government websites, learning about the specialized paper used for printing and the complex security features embedded in each bill. With his newfound knowledge, Frank faced his next challenge: obtaining the right paper. He concocted a false identity and reached out to paper mills across Europe, each time spinning a fabricated tale to secure their cooperation. His persistence paid off when a paper mill in Germany agreed to provide him with the specific type of paper needed for his counterfeit bills. Frank's elaborate plan was coming together. Soon, he would have everything in place to print a staggering $250 million in counterfeit US dollars. Frank had no intention of spending his counterfeit money. That would be far too risky. Instead, he devised a more cautious plan. He would sell the fake bills to others at 30% of their face value. This way, while his buyers would be getting a bargain, Frank would still make a substantial profit, $80 million in total. Determined to execute his plan flawlessly, Frank set up a secret print shop on the outskirts of town. The shop was equipped with high-end printing equipment and sophisticated software, all carefully chosen to replicate the US dollar as accurately as possible. When the specialized paper finally arrived from Germany, Frank wasted no time. He plunged into the task of printing the counterfeit bills, working around the clock to complete the job quickly and efficiently. His goal was to finish the printing as fast as possible to avoid any mishaps or unwanted attention. After 5 intense months, Frank's efforts bore fruit. He had successfully printed $250 million worth of counterfeit $20 bills. With the massive stack of fake currency ready, Frank's next challenge was to find buyers. He reached out to potential clients outside the US, carefully vetting each one to avoid attracting law enforcement scrutiny. Orders began pouring in, and Frank started moving the counterfeit money, dealing in $1 million chunks at a time. His operation ran smoothly, and over the next few years he managed to sell approximately $50 million worth of the counterfeit bills. With $200 million still in his possession, Frank knew it was time to broaden his client base. He set his sights on a new group of buyers, unaware that this new network had been infiltrated by an undercover agent. As Frank prepared to meet a middleman to deliver $100,000 in counterfeit cash, he had no idea that his movements were being closely monitored. Unbeknownst to Frank, as he drove to meet a middleman with $100,000 in counterfeit cash, a police helicopter hovered high above, tracking his every move with unblinking precision. The authorities were keenly interested in discovering who would be receiving the illicit money, hoping to build a case against him. Later that night, Frank settled into a cozy routine at his girlfriend's house. Exhausted from the day's work, he drifted off to sleep. The tranquility of the night was shattered around 5 a.m. by a thunderous banging on the front door. Groggy and confused, Frank stumbled out of bed and opened the door to find a contingent of Royal Canadian Mounted Police and U.S. Secret Service officers standing on his doorstep. Without a moment's hesitation, the officers barged in, arresting Frank and beginning a thorough search of the house and his car. Their efforts paid off when they uncovered a printing press and $949,000 in counterfeit money. Frank was swiftly taken into custody and thrown into jail, where he awaited his trial. While cooling his heels in a Canadian cell, Frank remained hopeful, convinced that the leniency of Canadian laws would lead to a relatively light sentence. However, his optimism was soon challenged when U.S. Secret Service agents informed him of the gravity of his situation. They made it clear that in the United States, his crimes carried severe penalties, and they intended to extradite him. The prospect of facing up to 60 years in an American prison was a harsh reality check for Frank, leaving him stunned and anxious. Fortunately, Frank had retained a highly skilled lawyer. This lawyer meticulously reviewed the evidence and made a crucial argument in court. The police helicopter surveillance had not captured Frank in the act of transferring the counterfeit money. The footage only showed Frank's movements but not the actual transaction. As a result, the lawyer contended that the search warrant used to raid Frank's girlfriend's house was based on incomplete evidence. The court agreed with this argument, suspending Frank's extradition and granting him temporary release as Canadian authorities continued their investigation. In the courtroom, Frank's lawyer made a compelling argument. The surveillance footage captured by the police helicopter had not actually shown Frank committing the crime. Instead, it had only tracked his movements, which, according to his lawyer, meant that the search warrant used to raid his girlfriend's house was based on insufficient evidence. The court was persuaded by this argument and agreed that the search was unlawful. As a result, Frank's extradition to the U.S. was put on hold, and about 6 weeks later, he was released from jail while the Canadian authorities continued their investigation. Though Frank was free, his legal troubles were far from over. He knew that if the Canadian police gathered sufficient evidence, he could still face a lengthy prison sentence. As the date of his court appearance approached, Frank's anxiety grew. Even though he had avoided extradition to the U.S., Canadian prosecutors were determined to see him punished. In a strategic move, Frank decided to leverage his remaining counterfeit stash. He approached his lawyer with a proposal. If the prosecutors were willing to negotiate a lighter sentence, Frank would reveal the location of the $200 million in fake money that the police had not yet discovered. The government's priority was to ensure that this massive amount of counterfeit cash did not enter the market, as it could severely disrupt the economy. The lawyer presented this offer to the prosecutors, arguing that the government's primary concern was preventing the fake money from circulating. After some negotiation, an agreement was reached. Frank would disclose the location of the remaining counterfeit bills in exchange for a reduced sentence. This deal would keep the fake money out of circulation, while offering Frank a chance to avoid a lengthy prison term. As Frank made his deal with the prosecutors, he led the authorities to the final stash of counterfeit money, hidden away in the back of an old box truck parked in a nondescript hotel parking lot. The police seized the $200 million in fake bills, and Frank was granted a significantly reduced sentence as part of his plea deal. He walked away from the ordeal with a fraction of the punishment he could have faced, thanks to his strategic maneuvering and cooperation. Frank's story is one of audacity, cleverness, and the high stakes of living on the edge of legality. It's a reminder of how far someone might go in pursuit of wealth and the intricate dance between law enforcement and criminal schemes. What do you think of Frank's remarkable and risky journey? Have you ever witnessed or heard about something similar? We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We'll be back soon with more captivating tales and intriguing stories. Until then, take care and see you next time.